Hello there YouTube and good afternoon vinyl community, Alex here, back again to do another video today. It's been a few days since my last upload and I know a few of you guys have watched that video that I uploaded I think Monday or Tuesday, and I wanted to kind of continue on from that. I said on Monday that I wanted to start this kind of series of reviews of Bob Dylan themed films and movies. And the video that I uploaded on, I think, Tuesday was a review of No Direction Home, the documentary by Martin Scorsese of the kind of early years prior to the motorcycle accident of Bob Dylan, and talked a bit about this, gave my 2 cents on it, gave a lot of positive points and kind of recommended it to pretty much everybody. I didn't really have too much negative stuff to say on this, to be honest. If you are looking to pick up a Bob Dylan film or you haven't seen the review, then go and check it out. As I say, I uploaded it a few days ago, so that was the first one I did in this kind of series, and I wanted to continue that today by talking about another film, another movie based on Dylan. This one's a little bit different though. This is a biopic, I think they call it. But basically a movie. It's kind of got fictional aspects to it, and this is I'm Not There. Don't know how many of you guys will have seen this, but it's a pretty big budget film done back in 2007, directed by Todd Haynes. I think it's kind of a $20 million budget on this, so pretty big budget film. I think it made quite a lot in the box office, so this is very different obviously to the documentary I reviewed a few days ago. But I wanted to do this one today and talk a bit about this, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to ramble on too much like I usually do, but I'll quickly show you what's playing in the background. We have, as many of you guys probably know already, this is the Dave Brubeck Quartet, Time Out, and this is kind of like a two LP set that I got. Of 2 LPs by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. I got Time Out on one of the LPs and then Time Further Out on the other LP. I guess it's got probably a reissue, but a nice gatefold. And I have to say, I'm kind of obsessing over this album at the moment, I have to say. I mean, I didn't listen to it too much when I got it, but my god, this really hasn't been off my turntable over the last few days. It's just been constantly on there. And as you guys probably know, I'm not huge into jazz whatsoever, really. I mean, I've listened to Coltrane and Miles Davis and some of those big really famous jazz artists, but I'm not huge into jazz. It's not one of my favorite genres. But this right here is a masterpiece, and I think for someone like me, if you're looking to kind of jump into jazz but you don't know too much about it, and this is a very accessible album to listen to, and as I say, it's kind of made me want to check out some more of the Dave Brubeck Quartet, but also some more jazz in general. This is definitely an album I think essential for everybody to have in their collection. So without any more talking, I'll get straight into the review of this film right here. Not going to make this review too long. I think the last one I did yesterday, that I did the start of the week, was around 20 minutes, so I'll try to make this one a bit shorter. But yeah, this is I'm Not There, directed by Todd Haynes, released in 2007. Obviously, I said with it quite a big budget. I think 20 million is quite a big budget. It's not huge, but it's pretty big. And a little bit of history on Todd Haynes and the origins of this movie. Todd Haynes, I didn't know anything about him before buying this as a director, and I watched the special features on this before the film because I wanted to learn a bit more about how it came to be, and they're really amazing on this. The special features, you get a whole lot of stuff, how the soundtrack was made and stuff, and the great thing about Todd Haynes is that he's a huge Dylan fan, which I didn't know before, obviously. He's obviously done his research, done his homework before making the film. He's very knowledgeable on Dylan, and what he actually did was he gave all the actors in this film kind of bootlegs and things to watch and listen to, and you know, really kind of try to boost their knowledge on Dylan, on Dylan's career, because and it really kind of shows in the film, because they all seem to understand the background of Bob Dylan's career, and they put forward some pretty, you know, relevant messages that I, you know, obviously being a Dylan fan myself, I know quite a bit about him, and I think they're pretty accurate in their kind of historical side of the film. So yeah, that's Todd Haynes in the background on him. The title "I'm Not There" is from a Basement Tape song from obviously 1967, and Dylan released the Basement Tapes officially in 1975. But "I'm Not There" was not actually on the album, the official album, I believe. I don't think it's actually been officially released until the soundtrack for this came out, which was interesting because it's an amazing song. It's quite inaudible. You can't really hear what Dylan's saying, but just the raw emotion in the song is one of my favourite of the whole Basement Tapes. So yeah, this is that's a great name for the film as well. I mean, you've got great quotes that you can use to name Dylan films after, like No Direction Home, Don't Look Back, Eat the Document. They're all, you know, great names. So bit of background there on the history of the film. Well, the interesting thing about this is that they don't actually mention Dylan's name in the film. The only time they mention his name is in a caption at the start when they say "inspired by the music and many lives of Bob Dylan," and that kind of sums up the movie in general, which is great. But all of the different characters have different personas and different names that they take on in the movie. It's not, you know, they don't use Dylan's name in the movie, which is quite interesting, I thought. But yeah, it opens. The film opens with a very striking first scene by Cate Blanchett, who I'll talk a bit more about later. But she plays the kind of mid-60s Dylan, and it starts off with a scene of a scene from him just about to go onto the stage to play a show in 1966, and then it cuts to this wide-angled shot of a motorcycle going past and then a crash, which is kind of a striking opening image, and it keeps the watcher thoroughly interested early on there. So I really enjoyed the first scene. It's one of the, I think, the strong points in the movie. But the kind of unique standpoint, I guess, for this film in general is that Todd Haynes wanted to put across, I guess, the main message he wanted to put across in this is that Dylan led many different lives and took on many different personas throughout his life. He didn't really stay in one place. He evolved so dramatically throughout his career that it was sometimes tough to keep up. And not only musically did he change and develop, but as a person, and you know, as a person he changed hugely as well. And that's kind of showed very evidently and obviously in this film. I mean, that's what I think, as I said, I think that's what Todd Haynes wanted to show, and that's the main message, I guess, of the whole film. And the way that he does that is quite ambitious, and as if you've seen this film, you know what I'm talking about. But Todd Haynes cast 6 different actors to play the different Dylans. So the different stages of Dylan's career, starting off with, you know, him trying to make it as a folk singer in Minneapolis and New York, traveling the country in kind of Woody Guthrie style. And then his kind of political involvement, his political side of things in the early 60s. Then his kind of rise to stardom and fame in the mid 60s, and the concert tours and stuff. And then him going into seclusion in 67 in Woodstock, and then his country period, and how he returned to touring in mid 70s, and then his kind of never-ending tour that's still going today. All of those different stages, I guess Todd Haynes thought that they all had, they were all very unique and different, and they all had their own kind of story to tell. And that's what he does in this film by casting these different actors to play the different Dylans at the different stages in his life. It's a very, very ambitious and unique way of doing that, and it's the kind of thing that could go very, very badly wrong, you would think, but it doesn't. I mean, he pulls it off very, very well. it's kind of quite confusing and strange. If you don't know anything about Dylan, I think you'd be kind of alienated by this film. But if you do know stuff about Dylan, you know the background of his career, then I think you'll kind of get this, and that's the great thing about it. So yeah, as I say, they cast 6 different actors, which I'm going to talk about. One of them is actually an actress. The actors, I'll go through them quickly. We got Christian Bale, Cate Blanchett, who's obviously a woman playing Dylan, which is very interesting. Marcus Carl Franklin, Richard Gere, Heath Ledger, and Ben Whishaw, who I'll talk about individually quickly. But yeah, the thing I love about this movie is that obviously casting different actors to play one person is fascinating, and they all take on their different stories. The thing I love about this is there's not too much overlap between the stories, and I don't think the film sticks to the kind of conventional story of Dylan's career, and how his life actually unfolded in real life, because obviously he did change and develop hugely, but he didn't actually change it. He was still the same person. I mean, that was clear throughout his whole career. But I mean, casting the different actors to play these different stories, there's not too much overlap between the stories. The storylines are quite different, and they're on parallels, but they're not. They don't overlap too much, and that's what I love about this. It doesn't stick to the conventional story of Dylan's career, but it tells the story well. I mean, it's, as I say, it's historically pretty accurate, and Todd Haynes does a great job in telling the story of this fascinating, illustrious career. So I'll just go through the different actors that play the different Dylans in this film. As I just said, they all live out very different. They all play out very different personas and have very different stories to tell in the movie, which is one of the things I love. But I also love how different all of the actors are. Not only in how they act and how they portray their version of Bob Dylan, but also how how their personalities differ as actors, and also how they physically differ, how they look. And as I've said, there's a woman to play one of the Dylans, and there's a young African American boy to play another one of the Dylans. So it's very interesting how Todd Haynes cast these this vast variety of different actors to play the different guises of Bob Dylan. So I'll just go through them quickly and pick out some favourites here. We got Marcus Carl Franklin is one of my favourite actors in the whole film. He's the young African American boy. I think he's 13, 14 years old in the film. He's probably a bit older now. Well, obviously he's a bit older now, probably 18, 19. But in the film, he's very, very young, and as I say, he's young African American, playing obviously a white man. So which is very interesting how Todd Haynes casted him to play Bob Dylan. But the character that he plays in the film is the kind of carefree, freewheeling Dylan that I guess we kind of romantically see him as, even though it might not have actually been that way in real life. But he plays the young Dylan, and his character is actually called Woody Guthrie in the film, and I think that's quite interesting, because I think Marcus Carl Franklin tells Woody Guthrie's story a lot more accurately than he tells Bob Dylan's story. Obviously, Dylan was hugely influenced by Woody Guthrie, and that's why they have this part in the film. As I say, I think the character that Marcus Carl Franklin plays, he's carrying around this guitar with "The Machine Kills Fascists" on the guitar case, which is what Woody Guthrie had on his guitar case. And he's only got a few dollars in his pocket, and he's traveling on freight trains and stuff. And it's the kind of romantic way we look at how it might have been for Dylan in the early years before he reached New York and before he reached stardom in any way, shape or form. But I don't think it's actually how it happened for Bob Dylan, but obviously that's a part of his history, and he was just so, he was so influenced by Woody Guthrie. All of his early work was influenced by him, so it's definitely a significant, a relevant part in the film, and he's one of my favourite actors for sure. Marcus Carl Franklin does an amazing job. Moving on, we've got Ben Whishaw, who plays a very interesting Dylan. He doesn't really have a storyline, but he's kind of playing the rebellious Dylan, and the Dylan that treated the media in such a harsh and notable way that Dylan was renowned for having this really rebellious attitude, and towards reporters he was very cynical towards them, and he just really didn't like them or what they wrote about him really. So Ben Whishaw kind of plays that Dylan and his relationship with the media, and as I say, he doesn't have a storyline, but they cut from other storylines back to Ben Whishaw in this kind of interrogation style question and answer session, I guess, with a reporter, and he's kind of shelling out these kind of quotes that Dylan might have said in his life, and it's quite striking, and it's a nice thing to have to flash to from different stories. And I think Ben Wishaw's character is probably the most accurate in terms of how Dylan actually was. I mean, he picks up on kind of the subtle mannerisms and nuances that made Dylan so unique in the 60s, and that's one of the things I love about his character. So that's Ben Whishaw playing the kind of mid-60s rebellious Dylan. Moving on to Christian Bale, who's quite a famous actor, I believe. He plays the kind of political guise of Dylan in the early 60s. And his character is called Jack Rollins, and it's really interesting. It's quite hard to explain, but in the film they kind of parody No Direction Home in the kind of documentary style. They kind of mimic it pretty obviously. For instance, they kind of show this guy Jack Rollins playing these like political songs, these kind of political protest songs, giving these speeches like the civil liberties speech that Dylan gave in real life, and then they cut back to like scenes from interviews with Joan Baez, almost directly mimicking what she's like on No Direction Home. So it's kind of interesting how they do that. And again, it's so different from the rest of the film. It's kind of amazing how he could put that in there, but it works fantastically well. So that's Christian Bale's part. He plays the political period, which is obviously a very crucial part of Bob's career. Moving on to Richard Gere, who plays... this is probably when the film veers off most obviously from... veers off course most obviously from the actual story. I don't think Richard Gere really has a part that's directly inspired by a part of Bob's career, but he plays a character called Billy the Kid, and I guess that's referencing Dylan's involvement in the movie Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which was released in, I think, 1973. I'm not sure what Dylan played in that film, but I don't think he played Billy the Kid, but he played a character in the film, and he was always into movies, and this part of the film's done in a very movie style, almost stereotypically movie style fashion. But it's kind of very atmospheric and desolate. The environment is a very important part in this part of the film. Billy the Kid's living in like this, this very old-fashioned Americana style village with all these strange people, and there's like a scene with this dead woman and this guy singing going to Acapulco over it, and it's really haunting, and it's a strange part of the film. I can't explain it too well. You have to see it to kind of understand it, but it's interesting. I guess it could kind of reference Dylan's seclusion, and when he went into seclusion in '67, his kind of separation from popularity and all the hype and excitement and buzz that went with those early years, and then he just completely went off the map and just remained under the radar for like 3 years in Woodstock. And that's kind of how it feels. Like they cut from all these frantic drug-fueled scenes to these Richard Gere scenes, which are kind of sobering, which is interesting, and he plays a great part as well. So moving on to the final two actors in the film, the last two I want to talk about are probably my two favourites actually. The first one is Cate Blanchett, who's obviously a woman playing Bob Dylan, who's a man, And it's one of the most interesting and ambitious things Todd Haynes does in the movie, probably the most ambitious actually, but he pulls it off with flying colours, I have to say. She plays the part of Jude Quinn, which is basically Dylan in 1965 and 1966, kind of his controversial prime, you know, when he went electric with the band and went on this wild concert tour, started taking drugs, well, supposedly taking drugs, you know, living out this wild lifestyle and becoming this superstar in no time whatsoever, which was crazy for him at the time and crazy for people who witnessed it. And, you know, Cate Blanchett plays that Dylan, which is fascinating. You know, how Todd Haynes managed to pull it off as well as he did is beyond me. And the first thing I want to say is she looks amazing in the film. You know, Dylan had a very distinct image in 1966. On the front here you see a silhouette of her in her, you know, in her guise, I guess. Yeah, she looks amazing in the film. She looks very, very Dylan-like, and that's the thing. You can kind of get away with casting a woman as Dylan in '66 because he was kind of a strange, mythical being. He wasn't really like he was in the early '60s or like he was in the '70s. It was a strange time for him. He started taking, well, supposedly taking drugs. We know he started taking heroin in '65. Got very, very thin, and you know, everything about him really kind of changed. He grew out his hair, started wearing different clothes, and it was just a very strange time for him, but it was an amazing time, an electrifying time as well. And she plays the most important period, I believe. Well, in my eyes, the most important period. And the only thing I don't like about her character and how she portrays Dylan in this is that I think he's shown in this as being a bit of a dick, if I'm quite honest. And you know, yes, he was very arrogant, especially towards reporters. He was very very direct, didn't really hold anything in, or hold anything back. He'd kind of speak his mind to a certain extent, and you know, that's kind of a fact. You can see that in his interviews and his press conferences, and you know, those in Don't Look Back and Eat the Document. But I don't think he was that much of a dick as he's made out to be in this. I mean, they've got like party scenes of him, of Cate Blanchett at party, like these wild parties, and he's just like falling over, throwing up, drunk, and you know, just like being really horrible to everybody. And I don't think that's how it actually was. Maybe he kind of does it for a comical effect, and that is quite part of Cate Blanchett's character. She's yeah, there's some funny scenes with Jude Quinn in the film, where one of the scenes is at Newport, obviously a historical moment when he went electric, and in the film, it's funny, they turn up at the on the stage, open up these like suitcases, take out these machine guns and start firing at the crowd, the whole band, and it's kind of metaphorically quite funny. Like, that's kind of what it was. It was like a massive fuck you to the whole of you know, his fan base, and that's one of the funny scenes that's put in the film. Also with Edie Sedgwick, he was involved with Edie Sedgwick, Andy Warhol's like poster girl, and there's kind of some kind of psychedelic funny scenes that they put in there with Cate Blanchett and this woman playing Edie Sedgwick. So there's some funny scenes in there as well, and I think it's kind of quirky how he works the character with he works Cate Blanchett's character, but she's one of my favourite in the whole film, and just does an amazing job with that. So that's Cate Blanchett. And finally Heath Ledger, who's obviously tragically died, I think, a few years ago, so rest in peace, Heath Ledger, because he's a great actor. He plays Robbie Clark in the movie, who's, if I'm right in saying, he plays an actor playing out the life of Jack Rollins, who's, as I mentioned, Christian Bale, the political Dylan. But that's not really the main thing about him in the film. He's probably the main character, Heath Ledger, and he plays out the romantic life of Bob Dylan, and the kind of how you know, his personal life and his love life, and how that influenced his songwriting, and obviously the whole of some of his greatest songs were written out of heartbreak and out of love. You know, his songs to Suze Rotolo and Joan Baez, arguably, and Sarah Lowndes, his wife. from 65 to 77. And yeah, they cast Charlotte Gainsbourg, who's Serge Gainsbourg's daughter, to play Suze Rotolo and Sarah Lowndes. They kind of merged together. It's kind of just loosely based on Dylan's romantic life, I guess. But Charlotte Gainsbourg plays his wife, Sarah Lowndes, and Suze Rotolo as well. And she does an amazing job. She's probably also one of my favourite actors in the film. She adds a really moving, you know, kind of you know, serious side to the movie, but in a good way, because she yeah, she's just she plays out the character of Sarah Lowndes incredibly well. She's French, I think. Is she French? I'm pretty sure she's French in real life. So yeah, it's he's probably my favourite character in the whole film, just simply because of how moving his performance is, and they use like some of the songs from Blood on the Tracks to play out how the how his divorce came about in 77, and it's just a very, very moving collection of scenes there, and yeah, just shows how Dylan's personal life and love life had a profound effect on his songwriting. But yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about the actors. Getting pretty long here with the video, so I'm going to cut it soon. Pretty much wrap up my review here by saying that this is an amazing film, and I think it's worth it just to check out kind of how the techniques that Todd Haynes uses, and the actors and actresses that he cast to play the different Dylans is fascinating in itself. Even if you're not a massive Dylan fan, I think you can get something out of this. And all the characters are so different, as I said. They don't overlap too much, and they come from different backgrounds at different ages, vastly different ages, and they just play out the different Dylans in an amazing way, and it's definitely worth a pick up. The music in this is pretty good. I don't think the soundtrack's quite as good as No Direction Home, but it's a mixture of original Dylan stuff. As I say, the first time I'm Not There was officially released on the soundtrack, I believe. But also it's got some covers on there from bands like Sonic Youth, which are an amazing band, and some other famous artists as well. So some great music on here, and yeah, just definitely worth a pickup. That's all I can really say about it. That is I'm Not There. And sorry for making this review so long. I said I'd try to cut it down, but it's just always... It's always longer than you think it's going to be, I guess. But that's my review. I hope it's persuaded some of you to go out and check out I'm Not There. Definitely worth it. And that's the second of my series of reviews. I want to do these two next. Eat the Document and Don't Look Back. So I'll do those maybe over the weekend. I hope you guys are doing well. I've been trying to watch as many videos as possible, and just enjoying them immensely as always. But apart from that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video. Cheers, guys.